Jake was having just another ordinary Tuesday morning when his whole world turned upside down. He'd been working construction for about 5 years now, and honestly, he thought he'd seen it all. The job site was busy as usual, with workers moving around like ants on a mission. Sound of hammers hitting metal and machines humming filled the air. Jake was up on the scaffolding, about 20 feet off the ground, tightening some bolts when it happened. He remembers feeling pretty confident. That morning, the weather was nice, not too hot, not too cold. Perfect working conditions. He'd even brought his favorite coffee in his thermos, the one his mom got him for his birthday last year. Everything seemed normal until he reached for his wrench and noticed something weird about the scaffolding board beneath his feet. The wood looked different somehow. Maybe it was just the morning light playing tricks on him, but it seemed to have these strange, almost glowing marks on it. Jake rubbed his eyes, thinking maybe he needed more sleep. But when he looked again, the marks were still there. They looked like symbols or something, but not like anything he'd ever seen before. He bent down to get a closer look, and that's when disaster struck. The board gave way completely. It's not just a crack or a bend, but it snapped clean in half like it was made of cardboard. Jake felt his stomach drop as he realized he was falling. Time seemed to slow down as he tumbled through the air, his hard hat flying off somewhere above him. The impact was brutal. Jake hit the concrete below with a sickening thud that made everyone on the job site stop what they were doing. Hayne shot through his left leg like lightning, and his head felt like someone had hit it with a sledgehammer. Tried to move but couldn't feel his leg properly. The world around him started spinning, and voices became muffled like he was underwater. His coworkers rushed over, shouting things he couldn't quite understand. Someone was calling 911. Another guy was telling him not to move. But Jake was already drifting away, consciousness slipping from his grasp like sand through his fingers. That's when things got really strange, in what felt like a dream. Jake found himself in a place that wasn't the construction site anymore. Everything was white and glowing, like being inside a light bulb. The pain in his leg was gone, which was the first thing he noticed. The pounding in his head had stopped too. He felt weightless, like he was floating in warm water. Then he saw her. The woman was tall, maybe 6 feet, with skin so pale it was almost translucent. Her hair was long and silver, not gray like an old person's hair, but actually metallic silver that seemed to shimmer when she moved. But it was her eyes that really got his attention. They were huge, taking up way more of her face than normal eyes should, and they glowed with a soft blue light. She was holding something in her hands that looked like a crystal, but it was pulsing with the same blue light as her eyes. As she moved it over his body, Jake could feel a warm, tingling sensation wherever the light touched him. It didn't hurt at all. In fact, it felt amazing, like the most relaxing massage he'd ever had. The woman didn't speak, but somehow Jake understood. What she was doing? She was examining him, studying his injuries with intense concentration. Her movements were precise and deliberate, like a doctor performing surgery. But there was something else in her expression. Curiosity, maybe? Or concern? She spent what felt like hours going over every inch of his body with that strange glowing device. When she focused on his broken leg, the crystal pulsed brighter, and Jake felt the most incredible sensation of healing. Warmth spreading through his bones. It was like his body was being put back together by invisible hands. The whole experience felt more real than any dream he'd ever had. He could smell something in the air, like ozone after a lightning storm. He could feel the smooth texture of whatever surface he was lying on. Most importantly, he could sense this woman's presence so clearly, it was like she was inside his head somehow. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything began to fade. The white light dimmed, the woman's figure became blurry, and the warm sensation in his legs slowly ebbed away. Jake tried to call out to her, to ask who she was and what was happening. But no sound came from his throat. The last thing he remembered was her eyes, those impossibly large, glowing blue eyes, staring at him with an expression that seemed almost fond, like she was looking at something precious that she didn't want to let go of. Jake woke up in the hospital to the sound of beeping machines and the smell of disinfectant. His leg was in a cast, his head was bandaged, and every muscle in his body ached. But as he lay there trying to piece together what had happened, he realized something incredible. He felt better than he should have. Much better. The doctor who came to check on him was amazed by his progress. The X-rays showed that his broken leg was already beginning to heal at a rate that defied medical explanation. His concussion symptoms were minimal, and his other injuries were healing faster than anyone had expected. "You're one lucky guy," the doctor said, shaking his head in wonder. "I've never seen anyone bounce back from injuries like yours so quickly. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." But Jake knew luck had nothing to do with it. He kept thinking about the woman with the glowing eyes and the crystal device. Had it really been just a hallucination caused by his head injury? It had felt so. Real, so vivid. It's more real than the sterile hospital room he was lying in now. That night, as Jake tried to sleep, despite the uncomfortable hospital bed and the constant noise from the hallway, he felt like he was being watched. He opened his eyes and nearly jumped out of his skin. There, standing in the corner of his room like a shadow, was the woman from his dream. She was exactly as he remembered her, tall and pale with those enormous, glowing eyes. She wasn't moving or speaking, just watching him with that same intense curiosity he'd seen before. Jake blinked hard, sure he was hallucinating again. But when he opened his eyes, she was still there, as real as the IV drip next to his bed. This time, Jake knew for certain that what had happened during his fall hadn't been a dream at all. Jake stared at the woman in the corner of his hospital room, his heart pounding so hard he was sure the heart monitor would start beeping like crazy. But somehow, the machine stayed quiet. She stood there perfectly still, like a statue, just watching him with those incredible glowing eyes. The soft blue light from them cast strange shadows on the white hospital walls. "Who are you?" Jake whispered, his voice barely audible. He was afraid that if he spoke too loud, she might disappear again. The woman tilted her head slightly, like a curious bird studying something interesting. When she finally spoke, her voice was unlike anything Jake had ever heard. It was musical, almost like she was singing, but the words were clear and precise. "I am Zara," she said, taking a small step forward. "I have been monitoring your biological repair process." Jake blinked, not sure he'd heard her correctly. "My what?" "Your injuries," Zara explained, gesturing toward his cast with one long, graceful finger. "The damage to your skeletal structure and cranial tissue. I have been observing how your body responds to cellular regeneration enhancement." The way she talked was weird, like she was reading from a medical textbook. But what really freaked Jake out was how she seemed to know exactly what was wrong with him, down to the smallest detail. "Look, I don't know what kind of game this is," Jake said, trying to sound braver than he felt, "but you can't just walk into hospital rooms. Security, cameras, locked doors." Zara looked genuinely puzzled by his concern. "Your security measures are not designed to detect my presence. I exist on a slightly different vibrational frequency than your normal perception allows." Before Jake could ask what that meant, Zara reached into what looked like thin air and pulled out a device that made his jaw drop. It was about the size of a smartphone, but it seemed to be made of some kind of living crystal. The entire thing pulsed with that same blue light as her eyes, and it made a soft humming sound that was almost hypnotic. "This will optimize your healing process," she said, moving closer to his bed. "Your progress has been satisfactory, but there are still inefficiencies in your cellular regeneration that require correction." "Wait, hold on," Jake said, trying to scoot away from her. "You're not a doctor. You can't just..." But Zara was already waving the device over his cast. Immediately, Jake felt that same warm, tingling sensation he'd experienced during his fall. The pain in his leg, which had been a constant ache since the accident, began to fade away completely. It felt incredible, like every cell in his body was being gently massaged. "This is impossible," Jake muttered, but he couldn't deny that. Whatever she was doing was working. The device pulsed brighter, and the warm feeling spread up through his chest and arms. He felt stronger, more alert, like he'd just had the best night's sleep of his life. "Your species has remarkable adaptability," Zara said, her eyes never leaving the device's readings. "It's much more responsive to treatment than our initial projections suggested. Your species? Jake asked, but before Zara could answer, the sound of footsteps in the hallway made her freeze. I must go, she said, and just like that, she was gone. It's not like she walked away or hid behind something, but actually vanished, like she'd never been there at all. A nurse walked in a few seconds later, checking his chart and asking how he was feeling. Jake wanted to tell her about Zara, but how could he explain that a glowing woman had just disappeared into thin air? The nurse would think. He was crazy. I'm feeling much better, actually, Jake said, and it was true. His leg felt amazing, his head was completely clear, and he had more energy than he'd had in years. The nurse smiled and made some notes on her clipboard. That's wonderful to hear. Dr. Chen will be so pleased with your progress. After she left, Jake stared at the empty corner where Zara had been standing. Had he imagined the whole thing? But the lingering warmth in his body and the complete absence of pain told him it had been real. The next morning, Dr. Chen came in with Jake's latest X-rays, and his expression was one of complete bewilderment. Jake, I have to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Are you taking any kind of medication or supplements that we don't know about? No, sir. Just whatever you guys have been giving me here. Dr. Chen held up the X-ray film to the light, shaking his head. Your leg has healed more in the past 2 days than it should have in 2 weeks. I've never seen bone regeneration happen this fast. It's medically impossible. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Is that bad? Bad? No, it's incredible. You might be able to go home in a few days instead of a few weeks. I just can't explain how it's happening. That night, Jake wasn't surprised when Zara appeared again. This time, she materialized right beside his bed, making him jump. Your medical staff is beginning to notice the treatment effects, she said, as if continuing a conversation they'd been having. This is expected. Your healing rate is now approximately 800% faster than normal human baseline. Normal human baseline? Jake repeated. What are you? Some kind of alien? Zara paused, considering the question. That term is ... not inaccurate. I am not from your world. Jake's mouth went dry. So you're really ... from outer space. I am from a place you would call outer space. Yes. My people have been studying your species for some time. You have characteristics that are very important to our survival. Before Jake could ask what she meant, Zara pulled out another device. This one larger and more complex than the first. It looked like a cross between a telescope and a kaleidoscope, with multiple crystal components that rotated and pulsed independently. Tonight's treatment will be more comprehensive, she explained. I need to examine your genetic structure more thoroughly. Genetic structure? What for? But Zara was already beginning her work, running the device over his entire body. The sensation was even more intense than before, like every atom in his body was vibrating in perfect harmony. Jake wanted to ask more questions, but the feeling was so relaxing that he found himself drifting off to sleep. When he woke up the next morning, he felt like a completely different person. His vision was sharper, his reflexes were faster, and when he accidentally knocked over his water glass, he caught it before it hit the floor with movements that seemed almost superhuman. Jake was beginning to realize that Zara wasn't just healing him. She was changing him into something else entirely, and he had no idea how to make her stop. Jake thought getting out of the hospital would mean getting away from Zara, but he was completely wrong. If anything, it made things worse, much worse. The first night back in his apartment, Jake was exhausted. Even though his body felt incredible, his mind was spinning with everything that had happened. He'd been discharged 3 weeks early, which had shocked everyone, including his insurance company. Dr. Chen had run every test imaginable, couldn't find any explanation for his miraculous recovery. Jake was just settling down on his couch. With a pizza and his favorite TV show, when he felt that familiar tingling sensation in the air, he looked up from his slice of pepperoni pizza to find Zara standing in his living room right next to his coffee table. Oh, come on, Jake said, nearly choking on his food. This is my home. You can't just show up here whenever you want. Zara looked around his apartment with the same curious expression she always wore. Your dwelling is interesting, electromagnetic. Patterns are much more complex than the medical facility. That's not the point, Jake said, standing up and trying to look intimidating. It didn't work. Zara was taller than him, and something about her presence made him feel like a kid complaining to his teacher. I need privacy, I need space. I need you to leave me alone. That is not possible, Zara said simply. Your treatment is not complete. The genetic modifications I have introduced require constant monitoring and adjustment. Discontinuing the process now would be dangerous for your health. Genetic modifications? Jake's voice cracked. What are you talking about? What have you done to me? Instead of answering, Zara produced a device Jake had never seen before. This one was bigger than the others, about the size of a shoebox, and it had dozens of crystalline components that moved independently. The whole thing hummed. With energy and cast rainbow-colored light patterns on his walls, I have been correcting imperfections in your DNA structure, she explained, setting the device on his coffee table like it was the most normal thing in the world. Your species has numerous genetic flaws that limit your potential. I am fixing them. Jake backed away from the device, his heart racing. I didn't ask you to fix anything. I was fine the way I was. You are not fine, Zara said matter-of-factly. Your bone density was below optimal levels. Oh, your immune system had 17 different weaknesses. Your cardiovascular efficiency was only operating at 60% capacity. Your eyesight was declining. Due to genetic predisposition? Should I continue? Those are normal human things, Jake shouted. Everyone has those problems, Zara agreed. That is why your species requires improvement. The device on his coffee table started glowing brighter, and Jake felt that warm, tingling sensation beginning to spread through his body again. Part of him wanted to run, but another part, a part that was growing stronger each day, craved the feeling of power and vitality that came with Zara's treatments. Please, Jake said, sitting down heavily on his couch. I just want my normal life back. Zara's expression softened slightly. Your normal life was inefficient and would have ended much sooner than necessary. I am giving you the gift of optimization. Over. The following weeks, Jake's life became a nightmare of trying to maintain normalcy while dealing with an alien visitor. Treated his apartment like her personal laboratory. Zara would appear at the most inconvenient times, always with new devices and new treatments. She showed up during his morning shower, materializing right outside the bathroom door and waiting patiently until he came out. She appeared in his car. During his commute to work, sitting calmly in the passenger seat while Jake nearly drove off the road in shock. She even materialized in the middle of his workplace, standing behind him while he tried to focus on his job. The worst part was that nobody else could see her. Jake would be talking to his coworkers, and suddenly Zara would be there, scanning him with one of her devices. He'd stop mid-sentence, distracted by the warm healing sensation, and his friends would ask if he was okay. You're acting really weird lately, his buddy Tony said one afternoon. They were having lunch at their usual spot, and Jake had just jerked away from something that looked like empty air to everyone else. Are you still having problems from your accident? I'm fine, Jake lied, watching Zara wave a new device over his sandwich. Just still adjusting to being back at work. But Jake wasn't fine. The changes in his body were becoming impossible to ignore. His vision was so sharp now that he could read street signs from blocks away. His hearing had improved to the point where he could hear conversations through walls. His strength had increased dramatically, and he'd accidentally crushed his alarm clock that morning just trying to turn it off. The most disturbing change was his appearance. His skin had taken on a slight luminescence, barely noticeable in daylight, but clearly visible in the dark. His eyes had developed flecks of that same blue light that glowed in Zara's eyes. His hair had started growing faster and felt different, almost metallic like hers. What's happening to me? Jake asked Zara one night as she performed another treatment. This time she'd brought a device that looked like a small tree made of crystals, and it was projecting complex patterns of light all around his living room. You are becoming optimized, she said, adjusting something on the device. Your genetic structure is adapting to incorporate improvements from my people's biology. Your people's biology. Jake felt sick. You're turning me into one of you. Not entirely, Zara said. That would be impossible. But you are becoming a hybrid, the best qualities of both species combined. Jake watched the light patterns dancing on his walls and realized that he was beginning to understand what they meant. Somehow his brain was interpreting Zara's technology like a language he'd always known but never spoken. "I don't want to be a hybrid," Jake said quietly. "I want to be human." Zara paused in her work and looked at him with those enormous glowing eyes. For the first time since he'd met her, she seemed to be considering his feelings. "Your human form was fragile and temporary," she said finally. "What I am giving you is permanence, strength, the ability to survive things that would destroy ordinary humans. But I won't be me anymore. You will be a better version of yourself." Jake wanted to argue, but as the crystal tree continued its work, he felt a rush of energy and clarity that made him feel more alive than he ever had. His enhanced senses picked up sounds and smells from miles away. His improved eyesight showed him details in the world he'd never noticed before. His stronger body felt capable of anything. Maybe Zara was right. Maybe this was better than being human. But as Jake looked at his reflection in the darkened window and saw the blue light flickering in his eyes, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was losing himself one treatment at a time. The worst part was that he was starting to look forward to it. Jake had reached his breaking point. It had been 2 months since his accident, and his life had become completely unrecognizable. He wasn't sleeping properly because Zara would appear in his bedroom at random hours to perform treatments, and couldn't eat a meal without her materializing to scan his food and analyze his nutritional intake. He couldn't even watch TV without her commenting on the electromagnetic frequencies affecting his brain patterns. The changes in his body were becoming impossible to hide. That morning, he'd accidentally bent his apartment key in half just trying to unlock his door. His neighbor had looked at him strangely when he'd crushed the metal like it was made of clay. Jake had laughed it off, but inside he was terrified. When Zara appeared in his kitchen that evening, Jake was ready for her. "We need to talk," he said firmly, crossing his arms. "What?" "And I mean really talk. No more of your medical explanations or genetic modification lectures. I want the truth." Zara tilted her head in that curious way she always did. "You have never asked for the complete truth before." "Well, I'm asking now," Jake said. "What are you? Where do you come from? And why did you choose me?" For a long moment, Zara just stared at him. Then, to Jake's surprise, she set down the device she'd been holding and took a step back. "Very well," she said, "but understanding the truth may be more difficult than you expect." Zara gestured toward his living room window, and suddenly the glass became transparent in a way that defied physics. Instead of showing the street outside, it displayed what looked like outer space, filled with stars and swirling galaxies. "My home world is dying," Zara began, her voice carrying a sadness Jake had never heard before. "We are called the Etherians, and we once numbered in the billions. Our civilization was ancient when your species was still learning to make fire. The windows showed images of a beautiful world with crystalline cities that sparkled like diamonds. Tall, graceful beings moved through the streets, all sharing Zara's pale skin and luminous eyes. It looked like paradise. "What happened to it?" Jai asked, genuinely curious despite his anger. "A genetic plague," Zara said simply. "It began slowly, affecting only a few individuals. But it spread through our population like wildfire. Our scientists tried everything to stop it, but we were too genetically similar to each other. We lacked the diversity needed to develop natural immunity." The images in the window shifted to show the same beautiful cities, but now they were empty and crumbling. The few Etherians visible looked sick and weak, their glow dimmed to almost nothing. "We discovered that genetic diversity was the key to survival," Zara continued. "Species that had evolved in harsher environments, species that had faced constant challenges and adapted to them, were naturally resistant to the kind of plague destroying us." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "You're talking about humans. Your species is remarkable," Zara said, her eyes brightening with what looked like genuine admiration. "You have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, natural disasters. Your genetic code is incredibly adaptable because you've been forced to overcome so many challenges. So you came here to study us?" "I came here to save my people," Zara said. "I am what you might call a xenobiologist." I study alien life forms to find solutions to our genetic problems. Earth was identified as a promising source of genetic diversity. Jake's stomach turned. You're using me as a test subject? Initially, yes, Zara admitted. Your accident brought you to my attention. Humans with severe injuries provide the best opportunity to study your healing processes and genetic responses. The window showed images of Jake's accident, but from an angle he'd never seen before. It was like watching security footage from above, except Jake could see Zara's ship hovering invisibly over the construction site. You were watching me, Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. I was monitoring several humans in your city, Zara explained. When you fell, I saw an opportunity to study your species' response to trauma and healing. I followed you to your medical facility and began my research. Research, Jake repeated bitterly. That's all I am to you? A lab rat? Something flickered across Zara's face that looked almost like hurt. That is not... That is no longer accurate. What do you mean? Zara was quiet for a long moment, and for the first time since Jake had met her, she seemed uncertain. Began studying you? I expected to gather data and move on to other subjects. But your responses to treatment were unlike anything I had seen before. The window showed recordings of Jake's healing process, but these weren't from any hospital camera. These were from Zara's perspective, showing him surrounded by complex energy patterns and genetic data that scrolled past faster than he could. Read. You adapted to my treatments in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Zara continued. Your genetic structure didn't just accept the modifications I introduced. It embraced them, proved upon them. You became something new, something that had never existed before. Jake looked at his hands, which were now glowing faintly with the same blue light as Zara's eyes. What am I becoming? You are becoming a bridge between our species, Zara said. Neither fully human nor fully Etherian, but something that combines the best qualities of both. I didn't ask for this, Jake said, his voice cracking. I just wanted to go back to my normal life. Your normal life would have ended in approximately 47 years, Zara said gently. Disease, caused by genetic predisposition and environmental factors. With my modifications, you could live for thousands of years. Jake sank down onto his couch, overwhelmed. But I won't be human anymore. You will be something better than human, Zara said, sitting down beside him. You will be capable of surviving in environments that would kill ordinary humans. Yes. You will be able to heal from injuries that would be fatal to others. You will be able to travel between worlds. Travel between worlds. My people need your help, Zara said, and for the first time Jake heard desperation in her voice. We have less than a year before the plague finishes destroying our civilization. But if we can combine our technology with human genetic adaptability, we might be able to save both our species. Jake looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something he'd never noticed before. Behind her scientific curiosity and her talk of genetic modification, Zara was scared. She was watching her entire civilization die, and she was grasping at any hope she could find. There are others, like me, Jake asked. A few, Zara admitted. But none have responded to treatment as successfully as you have. You are our best hope for creating a stable hybrid that can survive in both environments. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. What happens if I say no? Then my people die, Zara said simply. And eventually, when the plague adapts and spreads to other worlds, your people may die too. The window returned to showing Jake's street outside, but now it looked different to him. Everything looked smaller, more fragile. He could see the immense electromagnetic fields around every electronic device, smell the exhaust from cars blocks away, hear conversations from neighboring apartments. I need time to think, Jake said. Time is something we have very little of, Zara replied. But I will give you what I can. As Zara stood to leave, Jake realized something that shocked him. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped being afraid of her. Despite everything she had done to him, despite the way she had changed him without his permission, he had started to care about her. And maybe, just maybe, he was starting to care about her dying people too. Jake spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about everything Zara had told him. He walked around his apartment, looking at his normal human things, wondering if he'd ever feel like they belonged to him again. His coffee mug, his favorite chair, his collection of old movies, everything seemed to belong to a different person now, the person he used to be. On the fourth morning, Jake woke up to find his apartment surrounded by black SUVs. Men in dark suits were standing outside his building, talking into earpieces and watching his windows with binoculars. His enhanced hearing picked up fragments of their conversations. Subject shows elevated electromagnetic readings, one of them was saying. Definitely not baseline human anymore. Jake's blood ran cold. Somehow the government had found out about him. He was still trying to figure out what to do when his doorbell rang. Jake approached the door carefully, using his enhanced vision to see through the wood. A woman in a gray suit stood outside, alone, holding what looked like an official badge. "Mr. Martinez?" She called through the door. "My name is Agent Rivera. I'm with a special department of the government that deals with unusual situations. We need to talk." Jake considered pretending he wasn't home, but his enhanced hearing told him there were at least a dozen agents positioned around the building. Running wasn't an option. He opened the door slowly. Agent Rivera was a serious-looking woman in her 40s with short black hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "May I come in?" she asked politely, but Jake could tell it wasn't really a question. "Do I have a choice?" "You always have choices, Mr. Martinez, but some choices are better than others." Jake stepped aside and let her in. Agent Rivera looked around his apartment with the same careful attention Zara always showed, but where Zara's interest seemed scientific, this woman's interest felt more like a threat assessment. "We know about your visitor," Agent Rivera said. "Without preamble, we've been tracking unusual energy signatures in this area for weeks. We know someone has been modifying your biology." "I don't know what you're talking about," Jake lied. But even as he said it, he knew it was pointless. His glowing skin and luminous eyes made denial impossible. Agent Rivera smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Mr. Martinez, you're glowing. Literally glowing. Your medical records show healing rates that are scientifically impossible. Your neighbors have reported seeing you have conversations with empty air. Let's skip the part where you pretend to be normal." Jake sat down heavily. On his couch? "What do you want from me?" "Information," Agent Rivera said, sitting across from him. "We want to know who's been experimenting on you, what they want, and how we can contact them." "Why?" "Because according to our satellite data, there are at least 47 other cases like yours scattered across the globe. Someone is systematically modifying human beings, and we need to know why." Jake's heart sank. 47 other people were going through what he was going through. 47 other people whose lives had been turned upside down by alien intervention. "Happens to me if I cooperate?" Jake asked. "That depends on how dangerous we determine you to be," Agent Rivera said matter-of-factly. "Best case scenario? You help us establish peaceful contact with your visitors. Worst case scenario? You're relocated to a secure facility where you can't hurt anyone." "Not dangerous," Jake protested. "Mr. Martinez, yesterday you accidentally crushed a steel doorknob with your bare hands. This morning, our thermal sensors detected that your body temperature is running 15 degrees higher than normal, but you're not sick. You are absolutely dangerous even if you don't mean to be." Before Jake could respond, the air in the room began to shimmer. Agent Rivera reached for her weapon, but Jake held up a hand to stop her. "Don't," he said. "She's not hostile." Zara materialized. In the center of the room, and Agent Rivera's jaw dropped. Even for someone who dealt with unusual situations, seeing an actual alien appear out of thin air was clearly shocking. "Jake," Zara said, ignoring the agent completely. "I have been monitoring your conversation. My ship's sensors detected the arrival of your military forces." "Your ship?" Agent Rivera whispered. "We need to leave," Zara continued. "My people cannot wait any longer. The plague has accelerated, and we have perhaps days, not weeks, before our civilization collapses entirely." "Leave." Jake stood up, his mind racing. "Leave and go where?" "To my homeworld," Zara said, "where you can help us synthesize a cure using your hybrid genetics." Agent Rivera finally found her voice. "Nobody's going anywhere until we have some answers. You're under arrest for illegal human experimentation." Zara turned to look at the agent for the first time, and Agent Rivera took an involuntary step backward. There was something in Zara's glowing eyes that made it clear she was far more powerful than she appeared. "Your authority means nothing to me," Zara said calmly. "I am trying to save 2 civilizations from extinction. Your governmental concerns are irrelevant." "2 civilizations?" Agent Rivera asked. "The plague that is destroying my people will eventually mutate and spread," Zara explained. "It has happened on other worlds. Once it adapts to travel through space, it will find Earth. Your people will face the same extinction we are facing now." Jake felt like the room was spinning. "You never told me that humans were in danger too." "I did not wish to influence your decision with fear," Zara said. "But the truth is that helping my people helps your people as well." Agent Rivera was speaking rapidly into her earpiece, probably calling for backup or orders from her superiors. But Jake barely heard her, was looking at Zara, really seeing her for the first time. Behind her alien appearance and scientific detachment, she was just someone trying to save her family, her friends, her entire world. "If I go with you," Jake said slowly, "what happens to Earth? What happens to my life here?" "Earth will be protected," Zara said. "Once we develop a cure, we will share it with your people. As for your life here, ... She paused, and Jake saw something like sadness in her expression. "You cannot return to what you were, but you can become something greater than either of our species alone." Jake looked around his apartment one more time, at his normal human things that belonged to his normal human life. Then he looked at Agent Rivera, who was clearly planning to lock him away in some government facility. Finally, he looked at Zara, who had given him power he never asked for, but who was also offering him the chance to save 2 worlds. "What about the other 47 people?" Jake asked. "They will be given the same choice," Zara said.
"But you
"Are the most successful hybrid. Your decision will influence theirs." Jake closed his eyes and thought about his old life. His job at the construction site, his small apartment, his quiet routine. It had been a good life, but it had also been limited, small, predictable. When he opened his eyes, they were glowing brighter than they ever had before. "I'll go with you," Jake said, "but not as your test subject, as your partner. If we're going to save both our peoples, we do it together as equals." Zara's face transformed with something that might have been relief, or joy, or both. "Agreed, Agent." Rivera was shouting into her earpiece, calling for immediate backup, but Jake barely heard her. Zara was holding out her hand to him, and as he took it, he felt a sensation like coming home to a place he'd never been before. "Are you ready?" Zara asked. Jake thought about his answer. Was he ready to leave everything he'd ever known? Ready to become something that had never existed before? Is he ready to help save 2 civilizations? "No," Jake said honestly. "I'm doing it anyway." The last thing Jake saw before the world dissolved into light was Agent Rivera's shocked face as she watched 2 figures vanish into thin air. Then he was somewhere else entirely, somewhere between the stars. Beginning a new chapter of his life that would span worlds and civilizations, his accident had ended his old life. But it had also given him the chance to help write the future, for both humans and aliens alike. And somehow, that felt like the best possible outcome.